Cut. Okay. Yeah, we're gonna do another take. So yeah, just try to avoid their faces, as much as you possibly can, because it's really bad. I can't see that they're zombies. So could we tilt up?
You just told me to tilt down. Now you want me to tilt up.
What? Just do what I'm asking you to do, please. Mac, I swear, I'm so close to losing it.
Whatever you say.
Thank you. We're feeling good.
Yeah.
Feeling great?
I do not feel good enough.
Going to live a better life.
Any of my colleagues about this, I would lose all credibility.
And that would be the worst thing in the world.
Yes! Because I have a problem, Isaac.
Okay, I am really sorry, but I can't be the one that helps. Because what's the cost, Jess?
Ich kann nicht mit Ihnen kommen. Sie konnten mich heute mal im Tod führen.
Das ist wahr.
Was kann Ihnen das Reich so entscheiden? Wer lebt oder wer stirbt?
Can I get you something?
No, there's been a mistake.
So, what are we going to do about Thomas?
What about him?
He murdered someone. And don't you think you should, I don't know, talk to him?
I need some tea.
You can back out.
That's for 2 years.
Yeah.
What happened to this being a confession?
Well, I'm warming up to it. Come on.
Just because I'm a priest now doesn't mean I was always a priest, okay?
All right. Well, that's something.
And where did you find yourself after your tour?
Nowhere good. Like I said, Father, I'm warming up to it.
All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome. This is the very first Facebook Live with the EHE Foundation, and
Oh, wow.
we are very excited to have with us Cedric Gegel. And you just saw the debut of his reel that he you used that to send to get work, right?
Yeah.
So that was the first time.
That's the goal. Yeah, that's never been seen publicly before. So there you go. There's the premiere of it.
Woo! Thank you. Appreciate you sharing that with us. That's amazing. Thanks for coming, everyone. So we're here today to celebrate EHE patients. I've been profiling patients kind of all month long as we've been leading up to Giving Tuesday.
Yeah.
And I've got some more coming up, but let me introduce Cedric. He is an award-winning actor, screenwriter, and director based in the New York City area.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, he's across the bay in New Jersey today, but we won't tell workers that. But he was born and raised in, let me try to say this, Wapakoneta?
Wapakoneta, you nailed it.
All right, Wapakoneta, Ohio, on a steady diet of country music, I Love Lucy DVDs, and potatoes. Although his tastes have eventually shifted to film scores and Broadway and BTS, he does still love potatoes, thank goodness. His work spans stage and screen as a multi-hyphenate creative force. And after a childhood filled with books and playing in the backyard with his 3 siblings, he only grew up a little bit, and now he gets to dress up professionally. Welcome, Cedric. We really appreciate you taking the time. I know you're in between traveling all over the place for work. So
Yeah. Well, of course, it's a holiday week, so I'm home. So that's
right.
The nice guarantee.
Absolutely. So as we know, Cedric has had his experience with EHE. So I've asked him to come on and kind of talk to us about that. We're going to hear about his patient experience, and then kind of how that shaped him and what he does today and his work. So tell us, how did this all start? Like, when did you first suspect, something's not quite right?
It's interesting to examine my career and my art, because it is kind of inextricably linked to EHE, beyond like how it's impacted me long term. I was doing the musical Xanadu in college, and for anybody not familiar with Xanadu, it is a roller skating musical, and I am not good at roller skating. So I was one of the two leads, so I needed to get good. So I was out practicing and I fell, wrecked, pretty hard. I was just out skating around town with a friend, and we turned a corner and didn't realize there was a hill. And so I went down pretty quick and just biffed it right at the end of the hill, and crashed out pretty hard on some asphalt. So I was kind of scraped up and bleeding, and things hurt, and I had broken my wrist. And but the other thing I had done was when I fell, I kind of fell backwards like this, so broke my wrist, planting. But then my elbow landed, and a few months later, my elbow still hurt. And at the time, we were like, "Oh, it just hurts because you landed on it." But over time, it was hurting more than the wrist. And so I went to I was in college at the time. I was 20.
Okay.
And I went to our health and wellness center, and the doctor was concerned. I have a blood clotting disorder, so he thought maybe that a blood clot was kind of lodged in there, maybe.
Right.
So he ordered some scans, and we found this hole in the bone, and he had no idea what that could be. He was pretty sure it wasn't a blood clot at that point. So they did scans, and I ended up. This was in Columbus, Ohio. I went to Capital University. And they handled this so well, I should say. They were wonderful and very supportive. And obviously in town also was the Ohio State University. And so I went to the James Cancer Hospital, and they wanted to do a biopsy on it. And of course that's scary. I was 20 years old.
Oh yeah.
I was very young, and
you're a college student. You're not. This isn't.
I'm a college student. Yeah, I'm like, I'm kind of in that invincible era that had kind of already gone away with the blood clotting disorder, but still, you're like, whatever. I'm young. Like, live.
Yeah.
And so, they do the biopsy and they send me home, and I think they were testing for leukemia, if I remember correctly. And it wasn't that. And so they just they were like, oh, you're good. We did a bone graft. All is well. And my doctor, Dr. Joel Mayerson, I'm incredibly grateful for him, had a suspicion that there was something else. And so he decided to look further and called me, I think 2 weeks later. I was about to walk into my Shakespeare class. I'll never forget it. I was walking into my Shakespeare class. My phone rang. It said Wexner, Medical Center. And I was like, oh, I should answer this. And he told me, you need to come back. I've tested it for this extremely rare type of cancer. I had a suspicion, and that's what it is.
Wow. So how did he have that suspicion? Had he had any experience with EHE?
So he's one of the experts on it, which is just so fortuitous, like so lucky that
you kind of just
to have him. Right. Yeah. And I got the call and I hung up, and I just remember this moment of sharp clarity that I needed to go to class. And so I went to class, and I guess I don't know if it's a Shakespearean tragedy or comedy, but I sat there, and I remember the professor stopped me after, Dr. David Summers, and he said, you seemed a bit distracted. And I said, yeah, I got diagnosed with cancer. And he said, when? And I said, right before class. And he said, dear boy, why did you stay? And I was like, what else was I going to do? And I remember him saying, I haven't really thought about this in years, but now I do remember him saying that it was good that in a moment that I was lost, I had chosen to engage with art as a response. And that was subconscious. I think I was just like, just do this. Like, you don't know what to do with yourself. Do the thing that you were going to do.
Exactly. Yes.
But it was true. Like, it kind of, makes you start thinking about poetry and meaning and shared experience. And so I went back, and they had to take out the bone graft, obviously, because that's not going to go well with an active tumor in there. So they scrape out the tumor and do, I think that was when they did the cement, if I remember right. The whole thing blurs together. And this was 3 weeks after I changed majors to become an actor that I was diagnosed. And so it's really so tied in with my career as an artist and
it's kind
what
of
all that means.
narrative for you.
It really, really does, because they said, because it was in my elbow, so you can still see the scar is, where's my camera, right there, so you can see that it's noticeable.
Yeah.
And they had said, the one sure thing we can do to get this tumor out is to amputate.
Okay.
And it seems like it's fairly aggressive, and so this takes care of it. But with what you want to do, I was dancing at the time too. I was with a dance company, and no, I wasn't with the company yet, but I was still dancing, especially in theater. And they said, we'd like to, it's more risky, but we want to do what we can to save the arm. And, we could do radiation therapy, we could do chemo. What do you want to do? And I had this moment where I just said, like, listen, if you want to understand Shakespeare, feel free to ask me. If I want a medical treatment plan, I'm gonna trust you. Like, I don't go to medical school like you. What do you think is best?
20-year-old boy.
Years old. Yeah, I know. And they just said, like, well, we could cut off your arm, and I'm like, I don't want to make this decision. What's gonna,
Yeah, and that is, EHE patients have this outsized burden to navigate their care, because
yes,
no one else, or even the doctors, can't say 1000% this.
There is no set, it's not like you have a cold and they're like, here, take this medicine and curl up in bed with a hot water bottle. And it's really like, we're going to try to figure this out, but that's going to be what it is. And they felt that the best path would be surgeries and radiation therapy. And there was no option that sounded fun. So I went with the one that sounded like it would work the best. And that's what we did. So that summer I ended up living alone at school and having to work a bunch of jobs, and going to radiation therapy 5 days a week, or I think it was a 6-week cycle. And it was horrible. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It was terrible. All the skin peeling off my arm, and I had like the markers to line it up, and people kept saying how dumb my tattoo was. And I was like, I got really good at just being like, it's actually cancer.
Yeah.
Like, just, if you're going to be mean about it,
that'll shut it right down.
Because I was a tour guide at school, and like, the parents would be like, "Oh, what are you doing there? Is it a prank?" And I wouldn't do it on a tour. That felt like it was not a great representation of the school. But I do remember Capital really stepping up and just being great. And my professor, Bill Kennedy, in the theater department, created a course for me to take that summer. So I had the necessary course load to be able to have campus housing, and I made short films with my friends just as a distraction.
Right.
And I did The Music Man at a local theater, and just kind of was busy, and I was exhausted, and I was probably too busy, but I was 20, and I didn't know it at the time, but I was terrified.
Right.
Only later did I realize how scared I was. But it was an isolating experience. I think a lot of people in my life, because I had a lot of friends. I have a big family, and I love them all. I have wonderful people in my life. But I think everybody kind of thought somebody else was there.
Gotcha.
And so there were a few people. Dan Stemmen, who's one of my best friends to this day, and who I love dearly. He was the one, we were just out there making movies. And my family did their best to be present. They were all obviously working or in school, but they're lovely. And it was hard. I mean, what do you do when you're 20 and you have to do that?
Right.
But I remember my radiation therapist would play film scores, and then I would have to guess what the song title was, what the movie was, and who the composer was. And it was those little acts of grace like that made it sustainable.
Yeah. And, I think about your friend, just being a friend. It sounds like he wasn't treating you like his friend, the cancer patient. He was just doing he would have normally been doing that summer anyway, Yeah.
That was huge. That was essential. Like, I I don't think anybody wants to be pitied necessarily, but especially when you're a 20-year-old who
Right.
is suddenly, I was told you'll never play contact sports again. You'll never play football or basketball. Baseball's not safe. Like, I never ride a bike. I'm not supposed to ride a bike.
Right.
Because if I fall, I mean, to this day, if I hit my elbow wrong on a door frame leaving my office here, it could shatter, and that would be the end of it. And so
definitely no more roller skates for you.
definitely, yeah. And I never did learn to roller skate. What I would do in the end in the show is I would stand on a wall off stage and push myself off and just skate into set pieces and then turn around. I never did learn how to roller skate, so oops. I was scared after that. It's like, no, I'm gonna fall and break my wrist again.
Yeah.
But no, it was hard, and having those people who were present made such a big difference, and who treated me, not as this poor kid, but just like, this is a human who's going through something difficult, and I'm just gonna try to be present.
Right.
And that was great. And then I had surgery again after that to put a plate and 6 screws to try to stabilize it. And then I had surgery on my wrist because it had been initially diagnosed as a sprain, and then it was a break. So then I've got this arm in a cast, this one in a sling.
Oh my gosh.
It was
That's
fun. Yeah.
Not too much summer, right?
No, and my 21st birthday I spent at the hospital getting cancer checkups.
Yeah.
And it was one of those moments where I was already, I think, maybe on a different wavelength from some of my peers, not for better or worse, but just kind of a little bit older internally.
Yeah.
And that solidified it. I grew up very, very quickly as a natural result of that. And then had another surgery the spring after that, because my arm was only supposed to be able to extend out to like here, and it extends out to here.
Okay.
So, it doesn't go like fully straight, but it comes close.
Yeah.
The problem with that was when they placed the screws in, it was with the knowledge that it should only be able to come out to about here. And so one of the screws, not to get too graphic, but it like went through the bone and started severing my ulnar nerve. So they had to split the tricep and snap the screw off. And that was the most physically painful experience of my life. And I remember them telling me that if something goes wrong, I would wake up without an arm. And it's one of those where you're like, I'm just,
you're going into something.
Yeah, you're different.
Yeah.
You're different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Now, I know you were 20 years old. I'm not going to ask how old you are now, but what year was this?
So that would have been 2015 that I was diagnosed. So I'm 30 now.
Yeah.
So it is crazy to think, it's been 10 years.
Right.
And it's notable because they told me, with the treatment plan, the goal was to kind of hold on to what we could for as long as we could. So, I can only safely lift about 30 pounds with that arm now.
Right.
I can't do like a single push-up. I have a wonderful trainer who helps me stay in shape and do what I can.
Right.
So that I can preserve as much strength and shape and form as possible. But I do remember them telling me after about 10 years, I would start to feel it more. And I started to notice that this summer, that it is starting to kind of, just it's getting older too.
Getting older.
Again,
fun.
And it's funny because people are like, oh, you're young. And I'm like, it's not the years, it's the mileage, it's it's not a young man's elbow. Like it's not good.
Yeah.
It hurts, often, certainly daily. And I have an arm to feel pain in. And so I'd rather be that than the alternative.
Right. That's something else. So let me take you back to 2015. I'm trying to like do the math in my head a little bit. Was Google a thing? Did you get on the internet and start searching? Like, what was your kind of personal, like, I need to understand what this is? Did you have that kind of a reaction, or were you just like, I'm going to just trust the doctors, which
I mainly trusted the doctors.
Yeah.
They were very clear. Don't Google it. And Dr. Marison was very funny about it. He said, I'm going to tell you not to Google it, but go ahead if you want to, if you really feel so curious, because you're not going to understand anything you find. And I did maybe 2 years later, just out of curiosity, and he was so right. Like I, I've played a medical student in a movie, but I'm not a doctor.
Right.
I didn't understand what I was reading, and I was like, you know what? I understood what he told me. And
Right, and there weren't many
that worked out.
resources 10 years ago. I mean, I know
No, there was
foundation.
very little.
Yeah, I mean, we're about in 2025. We'll be 10 years old, so that would have been. I don't even think our website would have been a thing.
No,
yet.
I remember the AHE Foundation starting around then.
Yes.
I remember talking with Jenny, because Jenny was in Columbus as well.
Yeah.
I think we met at Steps for Sarcoma.
Okay.
So I remember it starting up and thinking, oh, this is great. Like,
yeah.
But it's terrifying to be in the Wild West medically, at the forefront of this. But it's also really cool to see the work that the AHE Foundation has done, and the advocacy, and how much has changed. There's obviously still a long way to go, but it's wonderful knowing that people are less alone now, and that there's less ambiguity now. And I know I've had people reach out over the years, because I've been public about what happened, and say, I was diagnosed, and just, it's not a community you want to be a part of, but it's amazing to see how the EHE Foundation has said, if we're going to be a community, let's do something about it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's for sure. The Jenny is the president of our board of directors right now.
Yeah.
So the founding people are still, for the most part, still very involved, in everything. So it has been a grassroots effort, and every little donation along the way has literally paved the way to where we are now, which is we have some very promising research out there, and like you said, patients, I believe now they're not immediately feeling quite so isolated, because there is a large for us, there's a large Facebook group. It's not a large for us.
There's resources. There's, it's not just like these long medical papers. If you Google it, there's at least something. There's a foothold, so it doesn't just feel like you're falling.
That's a great way to put it. I love that. Yeah. Okay. So now where are you? You're about 21 now, and you're getting, you've kind of, your surgical, that's done now, and now you're just kind of rehabbing, trying to get back to getting to a point where your arm's functional to the best it can.
Yeah. Just what does it mean to be who I am now, right? Like, what does it mean to not? It's these, like, I almost call them like little deaths, right? But it's this, like, oh, I'm not allowed to ride a bike anymore. That's not something I ever thought would be said. It's, I'm not allowed to play football. I love sports. I love being athletic, and unfortunately, when you're 5'11" and 215 pounds, you don't play sports without being physical. And so I still occasionally would play like flag football. I would be the quarterback, or basketball. I would just kind of be a point guard and stick to shooting 3-pointers. But I had to relearn how to shoot a basketball because my arm moves differently. Right. Dance was a whole thing. I joined a professional dance company, and they were incredible about choreographing around my limitations. I remember doing the musical Beauty and the Beast. It was kind of my first big show. It was at the Palace Theater in Columbus. It's a huge theater, and I was playing the Beast, and it was kind of a watershed moment where, like, maybe I could do this, right? And we got into rehearsals, and the choreographer, Heidi, was amazing at working with my limitations, not just for the famous dance with Belle, but for, the Beast has to get down on all fours, and I can't support, the weight of a 5-year-old child with my left arm, let alone, me. Yeah. And so we kind of figured out how I could crawl without ever putting weight on that arm, and how do we make all this function? And I remember my nurse came to see the show, and during Beauty and the Beast, they would flood the stage with fog, and Mrs. Potts is singing, and it's beautiful, and Belle and I are twirling, and then they choreographed this lift where I would just pick her up with my right arm, and it was this gorgeous, her dress flies around. And my nurse, she said she just burst into tears, because in that moment, all the work they did to try to save my arm and keep my work as it was worth it just for that one moment. And uh, I mean, you just, how can you not be grateful to people for that? And ultimately, I had to move on from a professional dance career just because it was the limitations were too significant. But I can still do it in musical theater when I can. There's certainly there's many
Kind of
roles
bring
I
it
can't
together a
play.
little bit, yeah.
Yeah, but I figured out kind of how to function with it. But there were all these little things where I can't do this anymore. Sand volleyball, which was big on our campus.
Yeah.
Not allowed to play that anymore.
Couldn't dive
Obviously,
down.
no. Yeah, or even just like if you trip,
Mm-hmm.
like your first instinct is to do this, and if I do that, my elbow could shatter, and then they have to amputate, and if that gets infected, that could be it. It's
Yeah.
so this is these like, and how do you keep that? How does that impact your mental health, right? Like this constant anxiety around this new disability.
Right.
And
And
so
was any of that kind of reckoning with those limitations and having that anxiety, maybe even today, about bumping it the wrong way? Have you been able to channel those emotions into characters? Has in some way you've been able to draw from it?
I think so, probably in ways I'm not aware of. There's always something about a character that speaks to me. For some, earlier this year, I had the chance to play William Shakespeare in Something Rotten, which is one of my favorite shows. It's a really dumb comedy, and I love it to death. And there were limitations we had to work out with him, but there were some movements that I wanted to do where it would have looked like maybe I would have wanted straight arms, right? But if I can't do that, then what about him is maybe a little bit more languid, where like, what if nothing is ever quite straight, right? So if I wanted to do this kind of big, like boom, right, and hit straight arms and a nice angle, but if I can't do that, then what if he just never actually solidifies? What if he's always kind of, what if he moves like this and goes, I'm William Shakespeare, and he's always kind of floating around? It's a bit of Jack Sparrow with
I
him.
was just thinking that. I said
Yeah.
that reminds me of Jack Sparrow, yeah.
And so it was kind of one of those where I went, well, that's the limitation. So how does he work? And it actually helped define the entire physicality of the character and led to a bunch of great physical jokes that we built in.
Yeah.
And so that was it's stuff like that. You figure out how to do it, or a lot of times it's, especially in a fight scene or something like that. There's a Western series that I signed on to. It's in Turnaround. It's a whole thing. I hope we make it. It's really good concept, really good script. But I remember having to talk with them about, I can ride a horse if we have these precautions, and it's not allowed to gallop. And then for the gunfights, nothing can explode from my left side. It has to, if a barrel's going to explode beside me, it has to be on the right. And so it's just all these conversations about, if the horse is at a canter, then I can be on it. How could we shoot it where I'm not actually on a horse? If it's a dialogue scene, when do we need to have stunt doubles? It's a whole thing. And there are many roles I've lost out on just not being able to do it. Some I've pulled myself out of, and some through conversation with them. And there's no hard feelings on that. It's the necessity of the project. But and then there's just like daily life, like you bump into things, and where a normal person might be like, "Ooh, I'm like crouched for a minute or two on the ground,
Hoping,
and then pop some Tylenol." Or like with other actors, there's a dear friend of mine whom I love to death and I trust completely. And we were doing a scene where is in this movie, and they get upset with me, and so they just storm out on the conversation. And they had this moment, and normally I would say if there's any kind of contact, you talk about it before, but we trust each other, and so they felt in this moment, I'm gonna shoulder him as I pass him.
right.
And unfortunately, they just didn't quite process in time, like, I'm passing his left side, and they contacted with the elbow, and somehow I kind of didn't show it in the take. And then when it was over, the production had to halt for like 10 minutes.
Right.
Because I was just in pain, and they felt terrible. And I can't expect everybody around me. That's one of the tough things. Like I look fine.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's kind of a non-visible thing. They see the scar, People always
Yes.
ask if it's like a baseball injury or tennis.
Right.
But for the most part, I look okay. And so it's hard because people don't process that there is significant, serious damage that's present and that could be done. Right. Like,
Mhm.
people might grab an elbow when they're talking to somebody,
Right. It's very natural. Yeah.
and you just have to. So if I know somebody's going to contact me, I'll tell them, I'm like, hey, if you want to improv like a touch or something, that's great. Feel free. Just go from here up or from here down.
Right.
Please don't touch this. And I will kill a scene in the middle of it if I feel like I'm in danger. But it's just one of those where you have to live life a little bit differently.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, you're managing all of that all the time. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of never goes away. You're managing it professionally and, like you
Personally,
said, the house bumping into a wall, or a corner or something like that.
Or the one I'd never even thought about, but really started to come up this year is I was like, this shoulder cracks like more than it used to. Like it always feels a bit tighter.
Yeah.
And I talked to my doctor about it, and we theorized that it's probably because I roll around in my sleep. Well, I never sleep on this side.
Right.
Because it puts all my weight on the elbow. So that means that for the last 10 years, it's been back, stomach, or this shoulder. So it's, it's those things where you're like, that's so stupid. Like, it's,
Right, but it's
what are you gonna do?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
But you did touch on something that our cancer, our disability, if you will, it's hidden. This hidden disability. Many of us walk around looking great, like we're in good health. We look like we're in good health, and under the surface there's maybe pain, maybe just mental anxiety of walking around with
I live in New York City, so anytime I walk through a crowd, I'm kind of tucking it in, and it's I'm going to be at the parade on Thursday, and it's going to be one of those where I kind of probably sit in the middle of my little friend group and kind of stand like this for a lot of it, just so that it's one of those hidden disabilities people don't
think about.
Realize is there. Yeah.
Are you still followed by the team at OSU or James? I'm sorry. Do you get scans regularly, or how do you manage things now?
I was very, very fortunate, I think 5 years ago, to be kind of cleared of any follow-ups. Again, kudos to them. The treatment plan worked, and they no longer saw a need to continue to scan. And certainly, with the checkups you have to get, they're putting chemicals in your body, and it's necessary. But they kind of went, we don't see a need to follow up. And obviously, if something goes wrong, call. And I also, because I lived in Philly after Columbus, I lived in Philly for 3 years. And so I had a wonderful doctor there at the University of Pennsylvania. And she also helped, and she was the one who ultimately cleared it. So I'm very grateful I don't have any more follow-ups necessarily, but obviously if something does go wrong, I'm pretty quick to
I was gonna say,
go to the doctor.
Yeah.
I know a lot of men in particular are very proud, and they're like, I'm fine. And I'm like, if something feels weird, I'm pretty quick to be like, I should, let me see what's going on here. I'm pretty sure it's nothing, but let me be totally sure it's nothing.
Absolutely. Yeah. We talked a little before we came onto the live that when you've had something like this, every little thing, you can't help it. Your brain goes, oh, I wonder if it's that coming back or rearing its head in a different way. And most of the time, what do they say? Most of the time the hoofbeats are horses, but once in a while the hoofbeats are something else. Get on it, so stay vigilant in that way, of course.
And of course I've had wonderful doctors, both at the James and at UPenn and now here, where they completely understand, and they're very quick to be like, all right, let's take a look at this. Let's look at this. Let's get to the bottom of it. They do take it seriously, which is great. I hope everybody has that. I can't speak to everybody's experience, but I know I'm grateful that they understand that I'm there for a reason. My concerns are rooted in experience. I'm not just panicking. I'm like, I know what this could be.
Right.
Yeah.
So what kind of advice would you give to someone who is um, newly diagnosed with EHE and or kind of like with you, something's happening in parallel to their dreams. How do you sort of reconcile all of that together for someone?
I think for the first part of that, something that I didn't have as much when I was diagnosed is contact the EHE Foundation, use the resources that are there, get involved in the communities that exist, so that you're not as isolated. There's a phrase that I really love from a church I used to go to called "Faith is made whole in community," and I think so much is made whole in community. Humans are communal beings. We grow together. We find our herds, our tribes, and so find yours that will ground you and keep you sane. So what you're about to go through is really difficult, and you will almost gaslight yourself because there's not a lot of people that have gone through this, and so there's just kind of, it's very isolating. I talk about it with my therapist a lot, this kind of forced solitude that I feel. And solitude's not a bad thing, but when it turns into loneliness, that can be devastating. And so know what your space is, know where you need space, and then also know where you need to invite people in, and who's going to view you as a cancer patient, yes, and also as a human. It's not just sit around and talk about your cancer, it's play Mario Kart or sit together and read a book, go on a hike, be as active as you can, absorb sunlight. Like don't lose the battle for what like gives life meaning. And I think that feeds into the second part of that, which is like, find what gives you hope, what gives your life purpose, and not just like your money or your job, right? If I was just looking out for money or something like that, I wouldn't be an actor. Yeah. Like I'm very fortunate to do this full time, but right. So
yeah, I mean, very few are the people that those people that have hit it big with some big movie. I mean, that takes a lot,
and I would love for that to happen, but for now I love it. I get to tell stories that I care about with people I care about, and that's enough. But I also love hiking. I love reading. I love video games. I love movies. Which is part of work, obviously, but I still watch 5 or 6 movies a week. I got up at 5 a.m. today and watched one. Like, find what brings your life meaning, what enriches the tapestry that is you, and do that, because you need to remain engaged in those things that remind you that you're a human. Like, your body is undergoing this, but don't neglect the soul and the mind aspect of things. Not everybody has gone through what you're going through, but people have gone through things. And so maybe there's poetry that speaks to you, but whatever it is, engage with art.
Yeah. I love that. I think that's so important. And you're almost treating yourself as the human being, as opposed to looking at yourself only through the lens of a patient or a person.
Yeah.
You're like, everyone was so much more before they had this diagnosis that doesn't go away, just because.
Yeah. There's I very, very, very sadly, and this is obviously a whole other conversation, but I lost my younger brother last year, and I found this quote after we lost Austin that a friend sent me, where Austin had left them a voicemail. And it was this wonderful moment of advice from this kid that I watched grow up and watched learn how to be a human. And it was, emotions are hard, and we don't need to understand them to feel them. And that's something I learned by being your friend. So I just want to remind you to be your own friend as well. That's it. Love you. Bye. That was the voicemail. Oh, and it's like this, like, be your own friend too. Like, you don't need to understand what you're dealing with. And especially hearing that, in this moment of intense grief was incredible. Like, Austin saying that, but also like looking back on when I was going through treatments, and even now when I feel that isolation or that solitude of this, like, I have been through too much
Mhm.
for someone my age, right? Like, I've lived too many lives.
Right. Right.
But I can be my own friend. I don't need to understand everything that I'm feeling right now. I need to feel it and accept it as being present, and then be my own friend.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
you know,
That's-
and that has been it was so interesting hearing that advice from
Well, that is.
Austin.
Yeah. I'm very sorry to hear about losing your brother so young.
Yeah,
Your-
yeah, that's a whole, I got a great therapist. She's lovely.
And you're keeping her busy, aren't you?
Yeah, we have great talks.
Right.
But I mean, that's
But
also
it's important. I mean, there is with everyone's lives, whether they've got
yeah,
family tragedies or disease or whatever. It's so important to deal with the mental side of things, the emotional side of
yeah,
things, and
yeah,
kind of work through that stuff because I
yeah,
think we're all learning. That with when you stuff it down, which I've done a lot of stuffing in my life.
sure,
It
yeah.
certainly it doesn't just go away. It finds a way.
Yeah. I
So-
think there's that great John Mulaney bit where he says, see what I did, or I think he's saying it about his now ex-wife, but he says, like, I'm going to put everything I feel right here, and then one day I'll die. And it's like, yeah, that's an option. that's one thing you could do, or you could feel it. And like, I'm not sure when I was going through everything with EHE that I understood that I was afraid. And I wish I could go back and tell myself that it's okay to be afraid.
Yeah.
That's okay. And it's funny because now I feel afraid for what if I hit my elbow, right? But I've said it before. You can't be brave if you're not afraid, and you have to be brave to face this. I mean, it's scary, but like, admit that it's there.
Yeah. Right.
That's
Ugh.
accept it.
I feel like sometimes I'm still convincing myself that it's okay to be afraid.
Yeah, right. It's an ongoing process.
It is because
it requires vulnerability.
Right. When life demands you to show up, and sometimes it's hard to. Sometimes I'm just going to put that over here and not deal with it, so I can keep going through the day-to-day things that I need to do, and it does. It doesn't just go away. It kind of demands attention at some point. So it's
Yeah, and I think there's a balance, right? Because it is sometimes important to just put things away. Like Something Rotten, one of the joys of it is for 2.5 hours, people could show up at the theater and be distracted.
Yeah, I love. There's nothing.
I'm about to shoot this movie that it's such a good comedy, and there's no weight to it. Like, it is just a breezy, depthless comedy, and
We need those.
we need it. It's for 1.5 hours, we're gonna make people laugh.
Yeah.
And then I've done some others. There's that one of the clips in my reel there, two of them, the one in the church and then the one that's outside on that blanket. Like, those are some of the heaviest films I've ever shot, and it's like, I want to do that, and then I also want to make people laugh. And in the same way, there's moments where it is perfectly healthy to be like, no, I can't, like, I'm just not in a place where it's healthy for me to process this right now.
Yeah.
And my best advice for you in that moment is to put on Paddington 2.
Yeah.
Because Paddington will carry your fears away. But then there's other moments where it is really important to sit in it and feel it. It's know thyself, right? Be your own friend as well, and know, do I need a hug? Do I need ice cream? Do I need to just do what I need to do? Do I need to get up and load the dishwasher and vacuum? Like,
Absolutely.
know yourself.
Yep. I want to talk about one of your projects that I told Cedric before we came on to the live. I checked out the coroner's assistant, and I'll let you talk about it. But oh my gosh, I just watched like the first episode, but I literally have already decided that over the Thanksgiving break, I'm definitely going to do the binge, all of the rest of it at once. It was so cool. But talk about that project a little bit.
Yeah, I'm really proud of that. That was actually I haven't even thought about this, but it's a spin-off of a movie called A Murder Party,
Okay.
which is incredibly like low budget and bootstraps little film from the same writer director Angeline Walsh, who's so talented. And we shot that, I think, the summer after I was diagnosed, I think. So that kind of James Rigby goes back to the very roots of this, my character in The Coroner's Assistant. But The Coroner's Assistant, you don't have to see A Murder Party to understand it. It's great if you want to go watch it. But The Coroner's Assistant kind of stands on its own thing. My character in the movie was called The Coroner's Assistant. And then I asked in the final scene, I was like, can I name myself? So I named myself James. And some of the like jokes of the ambiguity of the character in the movie became the show. And so we shot on, any indie project, there's never enough money or time, but we all got together in Cleveland, Ohio, and we shot it just out of passion. It was a bunch of people that loved the concept and loved the story and loved making something really weird and funny and offbeat and strange, and just something that we were all like, this speaks to us, this group of people. And it was magic. It was just one of those experiences. I think the first episode took a year and a half to shoot, just because it was so logistic heavy. It was like, when can we all get together at the right, we have to have the right locations, we all have to be available, the weather has to be right.
Yeah.
The second episode, I think, took 6 months, and then we shot the third and fourth back to back.
Okay.
Which was great, because then it was like, I think it was maybe 7 days.
Okay.
And we just shot straight through, which was great. But it really is one of those little things that it just, every time it would have been easier to stop, we just kept going. And we made it, and it is so strange and so weird and so wonderful. And we ended up getting nominated for 2 Astra Awards. We were nominated, Indie Shorts Magazine named us the 2023 Best Web Series in the world, which is amazing. And then the Astra Awards nominated us. Angeline was nominated for Best Writing on a streaming comedy series. She was up against The Bear and Only Murders in the Building. We were the only indie series nominated. Marvelous Miss Maisel, these incredible comedies that I love.
And
we
you were
lost
right
that
there.
to The Bear, and we were right there. We were in the room. Like we went out into the ceremony, and for Best Period Costumes, we were nominated against The Crown and Bridgerton and Queen Charlotte. And we lost to The Crown. Okay, well, that's almost a win, right? Like that's an amazing show.
Yeah, I was gonna say, take it. Take it.
Yeah, and the costumes are incredible. Amy did an amazing job. And then we were nominated for 11 Indie Series Awards. I was nominated for Best Leading Actor in a Comedy. Jeremy won Best Supporting Actor. Amy won Best Costume, or Best Period Costumes. Might have been Best Costumes. And then we won the Spotlight Award. And then we're going to be receiving the Indie Spotlight Awards next month at the Astras. We're getting the inaugural Indie Series Award, which is such a huge honor. And it's just one of those shows where a bunch of people believed in it and believed in its weirdness and believed in each other and came together and kind of defied every single odd and made it, and people love it. And it's not for everybody, but that's fine, because the people that it's for love it. And I'm so fulfilled, and we're hoping to do season 2. The story's there and the scripts are great, and we're just working on getting the logistics handled. But hopefully I'll be putting the suit jacket back on and taking on James Rigby again. But it's so wonderfully strange, and I hope we get to do more, because we need more wonderful, strange art.
Yes. It completely took me away from what I was doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It sucked right in, and that's all it was, that's what I want out of when I'm, gonna
Sure.
a series or something. Like, take me somewhere else. Like, let me forget.
Take me to Victorian England, shot in Cleveland, Ohio. And
I love it.
I thank you so much for watching it. Thank you for asking about it. I love that show. I'm so proud of so many of the amazing things I've gotten to work on in my career, and the amazing artists I've gotten to work on. But when all is said and done, I could win 10 Oscars, and I will still at the end of my career look back on The Coroner's Assistant as being this moment of such pure clarity that, like, I need to be working on things I care about. I must be.
Right.
You know, and I think with EHE and my diagnosis then, it was kind of, they're gifting me a chance to pursue this career
Mm-hmm.
the way that I want to. It's not like if they had amputated, of course you can still be an actor. Of course there's roles.
Yeah.
But it is kind of fundamentally different. I mean, it's fundamentally different just having had the surgeries I've had. There's a lot of roles that I've missed out on.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Now,
you
did
know,
the,
if
the cast on that particular set, like, do you have to go through a thing at the beginning where you kind of announce what you have and how to work around it? You know, not trying not to touch it. You have to have those conversations.
I do, yeah. Generally, just with people that I think are that need to know.
Okay.
You
That
know, and
you're having
certainly,
a physical scene with it might.
exactly, yeah. So somebody needs to physically engage with me. If we have a fight scene, if there's a stunt, if there's choreography, anything like that, I try to be very clear. Usually, you know, I never accept a part without having read the script. And it's always in a meeting with the producers or the CD or whoever, the casting director. If I've read the script and I see there's something in there where, you know, it could be iffy with my elbow, I always bring it up before they cast me, because you know, everybody's always been incredibly generous about it. Everybody's very, very kind about it. But I feel it's important for me to be transparent about something that could significantly impact their project.
Right.
It's not just about me. I mean, dozens, if not hundreds of people come together to make every film or every musical.
Yeah.
And so if I can't do what they need to tell the story they want to do, then it's incumbent on me, I think, to be honest and transparent about that.
Right.
As much as it sometimes hurts to lose out on a role, you know, no one's ever like, ugh, he had cancer, we can't cast him. Like, it's never that. It's, I'm just not physically capable of doing something they need.
Right.
And that,
But
you know,
those are hard conversations to have, whether it's for work, you know, or for even, you know, in personal life with people. It's just, it's never an easy conversation starter. You know, it's just tough.
Yeah, because it's like, they're like, oh my God, that must have been so hard. And you're like, yeah, it was. Like, I didn't, it was hard. Like,
it was, right.
Right. Because at the time, it was just something I had to go through.
Yeah.
You know, they're like, you're so upbeat. And I'm like, well, what's the alternative? Like, I don't believe in toxic positivity. I think that's incredibly dangerous. But I do believe in being real about what you've gone through. And then also, like, that you went through it. Like, you made it, you know, or you're going through it. You are making it, like, one foot after the other.
Yeah.
What's the line from the horse, the boy, the fox, and the mole, or whatever it is? Like, I can't see where I'm going. And then the horse says, can you see your next step? And he says, yes. And he says, great, then take that. And it's kind of, it's not about toxic positivity necessarily. It's about, I'm here and that's enough. Like, I'm here and there are people I care about and I'm doing something I care about. And that's what life is.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. I love that. So where can you? I found The Coroner's Assistant on YouTube.
Yes.
Is that where to see it right now? And then, did you tell me it's gonna be more widely?
Yeah, big news. Next month it will be releasing on Amazon and Apple. I believe December 23rd, I think. And then late January, it will release on Tubi as well. So awesome chance to get it out in front of more people and get it seen. And hope people enjoy the little medical misadventures of James Rigby, the coroner's assistant.
Well, I so appreciate it. And I thank you for coming in, because part of what my goal was to hear your patient's story, but this is going to spread awareness, and awareness is important. It's a very critical pillar in rare disease, because we don't enjoy the same kinds of funding from government and pharmaceutical as wider, more well-known cancers. So we really rely on awareness and people, you know, giving their time, talent, treasure to us to keep going. So if you're watching and you're so compelled to give, we're in the middle of our Giving Tuesday campaign already, even though Giving Tuesday is until next week. donations are doubled right now. Our generous board of directors has agreed to double donations up to a total of $80,000. So we're trying to raise $80,000 from our community, and our board will match that to kind of infuse a big old $160,000 into EHE research. We have a lot of exciting, very promising research that's happening, but it takes time and money, like you wouldn't believe. Years and years and millions of dollars. And we're just, we're kind of like the little engine that could as a foundation. We're getting there, but it takes time, but we're doing the best we can for sure. So
well, and your work is so important, and thank you for doing it. And as someone that, when I was diagnosed, and in reflection, as scared as I was, I had my medical team and I had the people to rely on, but it looks so different now. There's just more reasons to not feel alone.
Right.
And I also think with how much the world has changed in the last 9-10 years, I think social media has done amazing things. I think it's done very painful things. And I think it would be incredibly difficult for someone who received this diagnosis to kind of fall down this rabbit hole of solitude, almost, of like, trying to find answers and trying to find research, and the algorithms just kind of pull them in and take them down a dark path of, mental health and everything with that. And so what you guys have done to create community and create hope and create a path can help someone not suffer needlessly in that regard. This is difficult enough as it is. And it's not just going to be one treatment. It's not just going to be one path to a cure for people. It changes your life. But there are, again, not to say like silver linings, right? But there's good things that can come from it. Nature will always reclaim something that's been destroyed, and something good can grow out of that moment of, I guess the best word, when I was diagnosed, I think the word was almost desolation, of just so much of my identity was taken from me in that moment. Not just, I'm a young person, I'm healthy, I can't play sports anymore. I have to be like so cautious about walking through a door. There were these dreams I didn't know I had that were taken from me.
Right.
And that's enough. Like, that is hard enough. And so what you guys have done is to bring light to that moment of darkness, so that it doesn't have to be as dark as it was for some of us when we were diagnosed, because of your work, because of your advocacy. And so if my story can help someone feel a bit more seen, or know that there is still a future, it might be a different future than what you wanted to have, and you should mourn the future that you're losing, but that your future, there's still joy, and there's still light, and there's still meaning, and there's still love. And so you guys, in funding your research and in doing everything you're doing, are also helping fight that battle in such a significant way. And so thank you for doing that. And I'm sure it's difficult. I'm sure sometimes it feels Sisyphean. Boulder's just going to roll right back down that hill. Okay, then
we have a lot of, I feel like we have this huge community of people that are down there to catch that boulder. Because sure, it rolls back for everyone or anyone at any time, but there's enough of us pushing it back up there, I think, that we're on the right track for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And you are, and it's just so exciting to see and inspiring to see. And I remember talking with Jenny way back at back in Columbus, and seeing what it's become and what it's done. And I'm so glad that I mentioned social media. Well, I'm so glad that it brought this moment together.
I know, I forgot to mention that. The reason I found this is Cedric made a post on Instagram that I saw, and I was like, it really touched me, and I felt the image that was on there. He's like in a white shirt, it's kind of different.
Yeah, we did some long exposure shots where I had different poses
Yeah.
all in one frame. Yeah.
And like it spoke to me, and I was like, "Ooh, I want to talk to this guy. I want to see what this is all about." So,
Yeah.
I really,
And that was shot by Dan Stemmen, the guy I mentioned earlier, who was, so present during that time. And
Yeah.
that wasn't the goal of that photo. That wasn't what we were going for,
Right.
but I remember seeing it and being like, this is how I felt and this is how I feel.
Yeah.
And so it's great that it brought this conversation together, and I'm so excited for what you guys are doing.
Yeah. Thank you. So for all of you watching, if you want to learn more about what we do, our website, let me think. I have a little thing I can show. So we are located at ehe.org. I put the little Giving Tuesday piece on there because that's where our donations are being accepted for the current campaign that we're under right now. And we also have a newsletter. It comes out usually around twice a month. And we once a month we focus on events, advocacy, all the sort of human side of things. And then the second newsletter of each month is really research focused, because we realized our community has a voracious appetite for research. It's unbelievable. We'll put up the most scientific webinar you've ever seen, and it gets more views than anything. I'm like, wow, people really like this. So we're trying to sort of balance the two. But
Sure.
so that's what we kind of do with our newsletter, is like we just send it twice a month, pretty much what you get. But so I welcome you to subscribe. We're doing as much as we can to improve outcomes for people living with EHE, and improve outcomes for those who are not even, who are going to be diagnosed in the future. So we're working towards, we always say we're working towards a time where, first of all, EHE is easily diagnosed. People get misdiagnosed all the time, but it's actually, I feel like that's, it's still happening, but it's not quite the challenge it was in the beginning. People are starting to read it.
Sure.
Is becoming, it's getting more accurate, and then easily treatable. So, and like you said, you touched on something like we may find a treatment that works for some people with EHE, but it presents so differently in some people that it might not be that silver bullet that does everything we want it to. But we're going to approach this from like a multi-pronged approach, if you will, and try to find something that's going to work. So I appreciate your time really so much. Let me look in the comments. I don't think we have any other questions. We had a couple questions came in that were asking about the year that you were diagnosed and where to see some of your work. So I think we took care of everything. But
you can always find info on my work on IMDb.
Yes,
I'm on there if you know the International Movie Database. And then I always try to post about things across social media. So that's usually the easiest way to follow my work. And of course, follow the EHE Foundation as well and keep up with their work. But thank you so much for having me. This is lovely. I always love talking about my art, but more rare, I guess, is the opportunity to be able to talk in an uplifting way about about people always want to know about it, but it's so lovely to talk with someone who actually understands what it was. So I'm not having to like fight for the language to try to describe what this super rare thing is.
right.
So that was like a weight off my shoulders right there, right?
Yeah. Good. Well, listen, you, everyone out there, and Cedric, you have a happy Thanksgiving, and hope you.
Yes, you as well.
Thank you for spending time with us today.
Oh, of course.
All right.
Thank you.
Take care.